They told him to get his affairs in order. Richard Hayes, 64 years old, sat in a hospital room holding the papers that no one wants to read, stage 4 lung cancer. The doctor's voice was calm but firm. We're looking at months, not years. But 7 months later, Richard walked out of that same hospital cancer-free. No miracle pills, no secret clinic overseas. What changed? Alongside standard chemotherapy, Richard began using something that most people his age wouldn't even consider a homemade oil derived from the cannabis plant. Yes, cannabis oil. At first it sounded unthinkable. But for Richard, it wasn't about breaking rules, it was about breaking the odds. Today he's alive, thriving, and spending his days helping others discover options they never knew existed. This isn't a story about magic cures or false hope. It's about real decisions, real science, and a man who chose not to give up even when the numbers said he should. If you or someone you love is facing a hard diagnosis, this story may change how you see the road ahead. Lung cancer doesn't whisper. It strikes fast, grows silently, and by the time it's found, it's often already deep inside. For seniors like Richard, the danger is even greater. You see, after 60, the body's natural defenses slow down. Our immune systems become less responsive. Cells don't repair themselves as quickly. Years of exposure to secondhand smoke, air pollution, or even just everyday toxins start to catch up. And here's the most sobering truth. The 5-year survival rate for stage 4 lung cancer is less than 1%. That means statistically almost no one walks away from it. It's also one of the most painful cancers. The coughing, the shortness of breath, the chest pain that feels like it's burning from the inside out. Simple things like walking across the room become exhausting. Eating becomes a chore. Sleep disappears. Richard had all of that. He was losing weight rapidly. His skin turned gray. His wife Ellen said she could barely recognize him by month 2. It was like watching the man I married fade every day, she later shared. And yet somehow he reversed course. That's why this story matters. Because too often we hear only the statistics. We're told what can't be done. But Richard didn't listen to the numbers. He listened to his body, to his wife's faith, and to the small voice inside him that said, there has to be more than this. Richard Hayes wasn't a risk taker. He had lived a simple life in Springfield, Illinois, raised 3 kids, retired after 40 years as a mechanic, and loved fishing on quiet weekends. When the cough started, he thought it was allergies. When the shortness of breath came, he blamed it on getting older. But after a few scans and a biopsy, his world cracked open stage 4 non-small cell lung cancer. The words didn't make sense at first. Richard wasn't a smoker. He lived a quiet, healthy life. But cancer, as he would come to learn, doesn't follow rules. After the diagnosis, his wife Ellen quit her part-time job to care for him full-time. Medical bills piled up. Their home became a place of whispered prayers and slow movements. But Richard wasn't ready to let go. One evening, a family friend mentioned something strange: stories of people using cannabis oil alongside chemotherapy. Ellen found online forums filled with testimonials. Not miracle cures, but hope. Maybe enough to try. That's when they made a bold decision. They moved to California. In Illinois at the time, cannabis oil was not legal for treatment. But California had more progressive laws. They packed their things, left their grown children behind, and drove west chasing a chance. I didn't go to California expecting a cure, Richard later said. I just wanted one more shot, one more way to fight back. What happened next changed everything. For many people over 60, the words cannabis oil can raise eyebrows. Isn't that just marijuana? Isn't it illegal, dangerous? Not exactly. Cannabis oil is made by extracting the active compounds from the cannabis plant, primarily something called cannabinoids, like CBD and THC. These compounds interact with the body's endocannabinoid system, which helps regulate things like pain, inflammation, and even immune response. Now, Richard wasn't chasing a high. The oil he used wasn't about feeling stoned. It was about reducing inflammation, helping his appetite, calming his nerves, and maybe, just maybe, giving his body a better shot at healing. The oil was homemade. In California, they found a small patient support group that taught seniors how to safely make it using legal cannabis olive oil and simple kitchen tools. No chemicals, no mystery. But it wasn't without risks. Cannabis is still controversial. Not every doctor supports its use. Not every state allows it. And it doesn't work for everyone. Richard knew that. But he also knew he couldn't sit and wait for the cancer to take him. He took careful notes, kept his doctors informed, and always used the oil alongside, not instead of his medical treatment. I didn't replace chemo, he told CBS News later. I added something I believed in, something I hoped might help my body fight. And the results. They came faster than anyone expected. Richard never saw cannabis oil as a miracle cure. He saw it as a partner. Every week he went to the hospital for his chemotherapy infusions. The side effects were brutal nausea, fatigue, a metallic taste that made food unbearable. But at home each evening, Ellen gave him a carefully measured dose of cannabis oil. It helped him sleep. It brought back his appetite. And slowly it gave him something else, strength. His oncologist wasn't thrilled at first. But when the scans showed no disease progression after 3 months, they took a closer look. Richard kept a daily log. How he felt, what he ate, when he took the oil. He tracked everything like a scientist, not a believer. If it didn't help, he said, I wanted to know that too. Month 4, tumor shrinking. Month 6, lungs clearing. Month 7, no detectable cancer. His doctor called it an extraordinary response to treatment. But Richard believed it was the combination that mattered. The chemotherapy fought the cancer directly. The oil helped his body endure the fight. One was the sword, the other the shield. And for seniors watching at home, he had one message: don't stop listening to your doctor, but don't stop listening to your instincts either. There's more than one way to fight. What worked for Richard might not work for everyone. But his story opened a door for conversation, for curiosity, and maybe for healing. After Richard was declared cancer-free, he and Ellen didn't just go home and forget the past. They went home with a mission. Back in Illinois, Richard started receiving calls first from friends, then from friends of friends. People battling cancer. Families desperate for hope. Seniors who were scared, confused, and unsure if they had any options left. So he and Ellen created something simple but powerful, a local support group called Compassion for Life. They didn't sell anything. They didn't give medical advice. What they offered was education. Richard taught others how to talk to their doctors, how to safely explore cannabis-based supplements where legal, and most importantly, how to keep faith when everything feels hopeless. Every Thursday afternoon, they'd open the doors of the local community center. Seniors from all over the state came, some in wheelchairs, some with oxygen tanks. They came not just for information but for strength. Ellen printed out dozens of copies of their oil recipe, legal in California, but still just a curiosity in many places. She labeled every page clearly, not a cure, not a replacement, just something that helped. To this day, Richard keeps a binder of handwritten letters. One from a Vietnam veteran who found relief from pain. Another from a widow who said the oil helped her husband eat again in his final days. This was never just about me, Richard said. It was about giving people back some control, some hope. And in a world where seniors often feel ignored, Richard became a quiet voice reminding them you still matter and your story isn't over yet. If you've made it this far into Richard's story, maybe it's because you or someone you love is facing something heavy, a diagnosis, a long road ahead, or maybe just the fear of the unknown. Richard's story isn't about a magic solution. It's not a promise that cannabis oil or anything else will cure cancer. It's about the power of asking questions, of refusing to give up, of believing that even at 64, life isn't finished writing your story. Too often seniors are told, just accept it, that there are no more options, that aging means giving in. But Richard didn't accept it. He adapted. He searched. He listened to doctors, to his wife, and to his own quiet instincts. That's the lesson. Whether it's cancer, arthritis, memory loss, or something as invisible as loneliness, there are always paths forward. Some are medical. Some are emotional. Some come from unexpected places like a bottle of homemade oil or a stranger's story on the internet. What matters most isn't what you're facing, it's how you face it. So if today feels dark, don't turn away. Let Richard's journey remind you healing isn't always about curing. Sometimes it's about fighting one more day, reclaiming one more moment, holding on to one more breath of hope. Because your body may age, but your spirit doesn't have to.